Roberto Luzzi from Italy. I'm working with Sicobas trade union.
And what is going on with the labor movement in Italy? What are the labor conditions and the kind of struggles that are going on in Italy at this point?
Well, in general, the labor movement is rather weak because we are in a period that has been lasting several years with almost without generalized struggles. But the union I work with is active in the logistics sector, which is the sector that has expressed the most struggles in Italy in the last 10 years, and I think also in Europe, in the whole Europe.
And we've heard at the conference the conditions of teachers, the conditions of healthcare workers. It seems there's an onslaught of privatization and destruction of public services.
Yes, in the public service, there has been a block of wages, salaries for almost 10 years. Now they probably sign new contracts just before the elections because the parties that are in the government want to get votes. But the conditions are worsening, still worsening, because there is a privatization wave also in healthcare. And so while 10 years ago civil service workers were relatively privileged, now they are in the same position as private workers.
And what are the role of the union bureaucracy or union officials in relationship to this attack on public services and the marginalization of the working class?
Well, there are the three traditional mainstream unions that are CGL, CISL, and WIL, which are quite passive. They support the government, so sometimes they call some demonstration. I think that in the last 4 years they did just 1 or 2 strikes. Usually they don't even strike for the renewal of contracts, and they have almost become a part of the state apparatus because they get money by giving services like bureaucratic services to workers, and that's almost all they are doing.
So the condition of workers in Italy, the right wing is growing and attacking migrant workers, immigrant workers. What is the political situation in the working class?
Yes, the political situation is that the lowest layers of, let's call them Italian workers, feel a kind of competition with immigrant workers for jobs and also for housing and for some welfare services. And the right wing are trying to instigate this competition and trying to get votes playing the racist card and anti-immigration card.
And what is the role of the left wing, the Communist Party, and other left parties in Italy?
Well, there are no more communist parties. The former communist party is now the Democratic Party. Now some small or splinter organizations are going to elections and presenting some slates, but I think presently they have very few chances to get many votes because they are not doing grassroots work. They are just playing with media, and if media don't favor them, they...
And what has been the role of Berlusconi and his government?
Well, Berlusconi personally cannot take part to elections because he has been indicted for corruption, and now his party, Forza Italia, is trying to come back to the government by allying itself with the former Lega Nord. Now it's trying to become, instead of the League of the Northern regions of Italy, a right-wing national movement. So it has shifted its attacks. First it was against people from southern Italy and from Rome. Now it is against immigrants, so they are playing the racist card, and they have made an electoral alliance with Berlusconi.
And what has been the effect of the Trump election in the United States and Italy?
Well, I think that Trump is not liked by most people in Italy, but there hasn't been a Trump effect. I cannot say that the right wing in Italy takes much from, yes, the kind of ideology, yes, but I don't see an American party in the right. It's not as American party as it used to be before. They are more anti-European, and in this sense, they might be also.
Was there any solidarity with the Greek workers when they were under the austerity attacks of the European community?
There were some actions of solidarity with the Greek workers, but very weak. I must say that there hasn't. Internationalism is something that is very weak in the Italian working class. Yes.
Now, American companies like Amazon are setting up logistics warehouses. How are they organizing in Italy, and how is it affecting the labor situation of the working class in Italy?
Yes. Well, Amazon has arrived in the last few years, while the logistics sector as a whole has been developed in the last 20, 30 years. And it is a special sector where about 90% of workers are immigrants, and they are exploited mostly by multinational companies like TNT, which now has been bought by Federal Express, by GLS, which belongs to the British Postal Service, DHL, which belongs to the German Postal Service, and other two Italian companies, one of which belongs to the Italian Postal Service, and another is being bought by the French Postal Service. So the state-owned postal services are almost monopolizing the distribution of parcels, which is having a big increase because of e-commerce and also because of concentration of distribution in commercial centers, big. But the Italian peculiarity is that these multinational companies don't hire workers, but use so-called cooperatives, which in reality are not cooperatives, but are just a mean to exploit and I could say rob workers, because they don't pay contractual wages, they don't pay overtime work. They used to treat workers like slaves, and many times in these cooperatives there are set up by mafia businesses that comes from South Italy, and they are often connected with the big finance. So there is a mixture of multinational companies, mafia, and other kinds of mafia-like organizations. So they don't pay taxes. They open and close cooperatives every 6 months, a year. So there's some group of these cooperatives that has evaded taxes for 1,700,000,000 euros in a few years. So real huge criminal organizations. And so we had to struggle with these cooperatives. When workers learn to organize themselves, then they have exploded in hundreds of strikes in different warehouses. And they have been able to change their working conditions, and their wages, instead of working 12 hours for 700 or 800 euros, now they work 8 hours for 1,300 euros. Yes, I was saying this because Amazon, compared with these situations, is on a legal way of exploitation. So they respect wage contracts, but exploitation is very scientific, and so they check every second of the time of workers, and the pressure is very high. So now we are contacting workers in one warehouse, but we have a plan to start organizing also in other places. Yeah.
And the issue of health and safety in these automated factories, is there a problem of injured workers and other social conditions caused by introduction of Amazon techniques?
I didn't understand.
Health and safety, injuries
Yes.
on the job in these factories?
In automated factories?
And Amazon factories, I mean, are workers getting injured?
We have made an agreement with the biggest multinational companies where we have a majority of workers that provides for a kind of insurance if a worker gets injury in work that reduces his working capacity. It used to be just like a lemon that you squeeze it and then you throw it away. Now with this agreement, with this insurance, they will get lifetime wage or lump sum that of a few 100,000 euros that they can use to set up, since most of them are immigrants, they can set up a business in their country or open a shop or do something. But these injuries often are not, they're something that they break their back, some injuries that come with time, but maybe in 5 to 10 years, a worker who works with heavy handling, but it's not just the weight of a package, but it is how many times you have to lift it in 1 hour for 8 or 10 hours per day, all weeks, all months. So we are also have engaged some doctors to evaluate how much a worker can work without injuring himself with time in years. So we are also trying to establish a maximum of, and one must also say that if you make labor more expensive, then automation will be introduced, and the most heavy duties will be done by machines instead of by people. Yeah.
And is trade union consciousness growing in Italy?
Well, in general, no. In general, there is a decrease of membership in mainstream trade unions. Some of them have more pensioners members than working members. Sicobas is expanding very fast, even though we are still in the tens of thousands, not in the millions, because there is a high demand, especially by immigrant workers. They know from other workers from their community that they have struggled with Sicobas, and so they come and try to organize in their workplaces. So it's spreading very quickly. But I must say that this is limited to the immigrant sector of workers.
And how was this union formed, and when was it formed?
Well, this union was formed together with other you can call them radical unions in the 1990s as a reaction to the retreat of mainstream trade unions and to the fact that they were becoming more and more conservative. And but Sicobas, this name came from a split in 2010 from one of these unions that were founded. And after this date, it had a very fast development, especially in the logistics sector, but also hotel workers, workers in the food sector, especially meat packing, and also in some metal, for instance, the Fiat group, even though the situation is very difficult because of high repression.
What kind of repression goes on there?
Well, we have 5 members in the Pomigliano factory of Fiat. They have all been fired.
Is that legal under the law in Italy?
It's not legal because they have sued Fiat because of this dismissals, and they have won. So the court has ordered Fiat to rehire them, but Fiat pays them to keep them out because it wants total control on the workforce and also wants to scare all the others that if they oppose their choices, then they will be fired.
And you're at this international conference. What do you see coming out of international collaboration and international solidarity? Do you think it will affect and help develop the Italian working class movement?
Well, I think that international solidarity is very important because the economy is more and more international, because the working class is more and more international. And so it is important. And also in order to have workers' awareness grow as a class and not just seeing struggle just to get some improvement that can always be taken away. In this conference, I've been to many other international meetings, and it is important that we don't limit ourselves to to sign common statements, but we try to connect workers and struggles. So, for instance, we were talking with some German comrades that are trying to connect by supply chain. For instance, H&M. There are workers who produce in Bangladesh and are paid $50 a month. There are workers in the houses in Italy or in Germany and works in shops in all Europe. If we can connect them, and I would like use the strength we may have in Europe to help those workers improve their lot, that would be something very concrete and that would also help us to have workers understand what internationalism can do. Another example is connected Amazon workers worldwide. That would be another important achievement.